My next guests say that having a party once a month is the way to go. Period Party hosts Nicole and Natalie are here with us to talk about their Period Party podcast. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
So, Dr. Botcher is joining me to talk about the Period Party podcast. Let's start right off. So, why exactly did you guys decide to start this type of podcast?
Well, there's a little bit of a backstory. I was the teenager with terrible periods. I feel like my cramps were so bad, I would literally see stars, miss days of school, and my flow was so heavy. I was that girl at the sleepover using a towel on the mattress, just praying that I didn't leak through it. And then my periods became really irregular, and they started showing up every 3 or 4 months, which at the time was a complete mystery to me. And my mom had had really terrible periods as a teenager too, so we just thought it was all normal. And finally, I saw a doctor, and she prescribed the birth control pill for me, which at the time was a dream come true. And unfortunately, though, I struggled with a lot of side effects in my early 20s that led into my early 20s. And that led me to pursue women's health coaching as a career. And then it led to the creation of the Period Party podcast.
Nicole, Nat, thanks for coming on. I think this is so relatable for so many women. I mean, in my practice as a dermatologist, we see how hormonal fluctuation, whether it's with puberty, with pregnancy, with menopause, or anything in between, impacts the skin. And I would imagine you guys must deal with hormonal or hormone issues quite a lot on your podcast, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's such a vast range of things that happen to women. We're going through stages and phases all the time, and it doesn't just stop when you reach a certain age. This is from when we are, children going through puberty right through to postmenopause. So there's so much to cover as women that we blame it on our hormones. We love to do that, but what does that actually mean? And so helping women really understand that is something that Nicole and I are really passionate about.
And I'm curious, in hosting this podcast, is there anything that comes up over and over, a topic that you sort of see regularly in the women who reach out to you?
Yeah. I think one of the standouts for us that Nicole and I agree on is stress is such a big factor. But we understand stress as being busy or having a deadline, but we don't look at the other small little stresses that definitely add up to impacting our health as women. And that has a big impact on our sex hormones. So I would say that that's probably a common theme. Nicole?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think that we just underestimate how much stress in our lives generally impacts our menstrual cycle, or we don't even realize that it is impacting us because we've never really been taught that. I also think too, and Nat, you'll totally agree with this, is that every stage of a woman's reproductive life, or the menstrual life cycle, as we call it, is generally described as a nightmare or a terrible thing. If you think of puberty, getting your first period, the horror stories, and then you think of fertility, which has become so challenging for so many. And then of course there's pregnancy and childbirth and postpartum, which are collectively a beautiful thing, but are often described, to me at least, as a series of physical and emotional complaints and all these challenges. And then you think, of course, of the joy of perimenopause and menopause, which we all know have quite the reputation. So it always just seemed to us that the message that women were getting was that it was all bad and then you die.
Just saying, I think it's lovely that you guys are reframing this.
What I love about the topics that we bring is it's outside of the box. We're covering not just mainstream, but everything else in between. And I think what that does for our listeners is it creates curiosity. Our podcast might not solve their problem today, but it creates this kind of Me Too feeling where you might hear of something on the podcast and then think, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only person that had these crazy symptoms. And all of a sudden you start to feel more relieved as a woman. And then that allows you to go and explore those topics further. So I think we're creating a place where people can hear things, create curiosity, and then take them on their own discovery with themselves. And that can also be great because it helps them to live a healthier and better life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, there's no doubt about it that when you have a successful podcast with all these different topics, and people do find that there are others out there in that community, that feeling like I'm not alone can make a big difference. So thank you, Nicole and Natalie, and keep up with those topics and keep helping, okay?
Thank you.